Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Admiral, for your service. You mentioned about deterrence eroding in the region, and then your testimony this morning in the classified session, and then also in this focused on the Pacific Deterrence Initiative. That was a bipartisan initiative that came out of this committee, actually. So I think most of the members of this committee, Democrats and Republicans, are certainly supportive. So is it your testimony today that you need full funding of that $4.6 billion as something that can help with regard to this eroding deterrence? And can you explain about that a little bit more?
I would say absolutely yes, sir. I think it fulfills what the law has asked for in the establishment of the PDI.
And that was in last year's NDAA.
Last year's
all
NDAA,
agreed to it.
and meets the strategic vision I have in the theater to present a conventional deterrent that would give China pause from any malign military activity that they would undergo against any of our allies and partners in the region.
Well, I really appreciate that. If there was one kind of takeaway from this hearing, you have the Indo-Pacific Commander, the entire Armed Services Committee, the NDAA, all pushing for this. I certainly hope the Biden administration is focused on this hearing and recognizes that they should fully fund the PDI, which is what most of us wanted and what we all voted for last year when we passed the NDAA. Let me next talk about the issue of the force posture in the region. You know, I just started my second term here as a senator, and I was asked 6 years ago by our former chairman of this committee, Senator McCain, to really focus on this issue of force posture, which I have been doing a lot. I just got home from Alaska, so that's actually being out in the region, as you know, when I'm home in the great state of Alaska. One of the things I've noticed is that our force posture seems to be somewhat, I would say, stale, or when you look at where our forces are, Okinawa, Korea, Guam, because they've been there for so long, and we have this issue that you've talked about, first and second island chain, the vulnerabilities. What is the right mix as you look at dispersal of forces, wanting them to be there quickly in the region, but also the vulnerabilities that you have, first, second island chain? I'll give you an example. Alaska will soon have over 100 fifth-generation fighters stationed there. If you have the right mix of tankers, those assets could be in, for example, the South China Sea or Taiwan Strait within hours with the right tankers. How do you think about dispersal of forces and the different vulnerabilities that we have when it comes to force posture?
Thanks, Senator. I think about it much like I've described in the Regain the Advantage, that a more dispersed design and posture in the region is going to be required in order to achieve the positional advantages that we seek. And that's done through permanently based forward deployed forces, Japan, Korea, Guam, elsewhere in the theater, and the use of CONUS-based forces, Hawaii, Alaska forces, that will rotate through the theater. That combination of rotating presence and permanent presence has to be robust enough in order to bias the time, to deny any quick action going forward. And that's a mix of capabilities. And certainly the fifth-gen fighters, I would tell you, are the backbone of any of our planning for a crisis forward in the theater and would be needed at dispersed locations within the first and second island chain. But it also means maritime forces, it means ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance forces, things like that have to be made available as well.
Let me ask, when I talk to officials, and I'd love your view on this, our intel community, the common theme I hear with regard to China's actions under Xi Jinping's leadership is alarm. That's a phrase that's used a lot, alarm. And they point to things just within the last year, the COVID outbreak and the non-cooperation that China's had with the rest of the world, the border conflict with India, and cyber attacks that were probably launched by China against India, major cyber attacks, an economic embargo against one of our most important allies in the region, Australia, crushing dissent in Hong Kong, very aggressive military actions in the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, Japan's EEZ. Do you agree these are alarming maneuvers? This is within the last year.
Yes, sir.
And what does this kind of do to your timeline if you're extrapolating out with regard to any potential conflict or timeline in the Taiwan Strait when you look at how aggressive Xi Jinping's leadership has been?
I think our concerns are manifest here during this decade, not only on the development, the numbers of, ships, aircraft, rockets, et cetera, that they've put in the field, but the way they're advancing those capabilities as well, in combination with everything that you just cited, Hong Kong, and Xinjiang, and Tibet, and the line of actual control, and the South China Sea and the East China Sea. I worry that they're accelerating their ambitions to supplant the United States and our leadership role in the rules-based international order, which they've long said that they want to do that by 2050. I'm worried about them moving that target closer. Taiwan is clearly one of their ambitions before then, and I think the threat is manifest during this decade, in fact, in the next 6 years.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Let me recognize Senator Hirono via WebEx.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Davison, welcome. This is probably going to be the last time that you will be testifying before our committee, so I want to add my thanks to you for your service, and of course, we will miss you in Hawaii. Admiral Davison, do you support HDR